shall begin. Gregory Dillard.
Chris Herman.
How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Welcome. You are on deck.
On deck.
How does it feel? You've now helmed, I think this will be 20 or 22, 21, 22?
I believe 22.
I think 22.
I believe. So
you've been the man behind the scenes running the operation on all these conversations, and now here we finally are able to have an in front of the camera conversation.
Pretty good. I've been looking forward to this. It's always a great dynamic sitting behind the controls, listening to everyone else's story. Mm-hmm. And you always wonder, would I have said it differently, or whatever the case is. Well, now once you're here,
you never know where it's going to go. It's
That's
time.
Correct.
Well, for those who are watching and listening, we are sitting here with Gregory Dillard, and Greg is our director of photography and producer of not only this podcast, but a lot of other content here at the agency. Greg, we've known each other 8 to 10 years maybe now.
That's correct.
Since we first did that first shoot together.
That's correct.
And so, you're a skilled videographer, camera operator, editor, overall creative person, and super interesting guy. So I know we'll have a lot to talk about today.
Yes.
So my first question would be to you, and it's along the line of creativity, so we'll just jump right into it. What was it in your, I'm curious because I don't think we've ever discussed this, what was it in your upbringing or your pathway along that creativity came into your life and it guided you in this direction?
Glad you asked that. So back in the 70s, as a kid in elementary school, I attended Palm Springs Elementary in Palm Springs, Florida, and I lived far away from there, so they bused us out to the school. I had an interest in art, so I used to draw a lot of comic book characters. I was big into comic books, and I got so enamored with it that, reading all these comic books, I decided that I'd like to create a comic book character. Sorry if I go off on this, but
yeah.
I almost told you this story in the airport when we were on our way to Wichita, I believe, but I said, let me hold off because maybe he'll ask me, and I'll tell that story then. So I created this whole entire character, and of course, as a kid, you don't know. You need to be legal with it in terms of having some legal representation if you're going to try and send it off to have it published.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this idea in my head that I'm going to get this thing published by Marvel Comics. So not only did I create the character, I drew him out, his whole story. I wrote the story of it, but I didn't make a copy of it. As a kid, I just didn't know. And I sent it off. I found the address to Marvel Comics. I gave them my name. I gave them a long story of who I am, how old I was, and my interest in hobbies, and I'd like to have this comic book character created. Sent it off to them. And maybe about 2-3 weeks after, I just started becoming curious. Hey, are they going to write me back? Are they going to accept it?
Mm-hmm.
And every day after school, I'd always run to the mailbox. Nothing. And one day, got a letter, Marvel Comics. And I literally almost cried because I was so happy. And I opened up the letter as I'm reading it, dear, I can't remember if they said Mr. Dillard or dear Gregory Dillard or something. Thank you for your interest and everything else. And reading this long paragraph, and then it comes the key word, unfortunately.
No.
Yes. Because of your age, we can't accept this. But guess what? They never gave me back. They didn't send back what I wrote or anything. And I cried. I just didn't think I kind of gave up after that. I kept drawing, but I kind of gave up. And I promise you about, I can't remember how many years later it was, I saw a character on TV, and I kept looking. I'm going, man, this story just seems awfully close. And to this day, I'll go to my grave with this. They stole my character. I have no proof that statute of limitations had run out. But it's one of my stories. And I did continue to stay in the arts. My mother was a big driving factor. She wanted me to really pursue it, but I had interest elsewhere tennis, football, basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and I dropped it, and I pick it back up, and I dropped it.
If I might just interject real
Okay.
quick, I'm curious. Tell me about. I want to hear about the character. Describe this character. Who is this superhero?
He was a black guy.
Okay.
He was a black guy that rose from a not so great history and background, but he became. I'm trying to remember the story because it's been so long ago. But out from the ashes, he brought himself up, and I think he was struck by lightning and became this superhero guy that had so much strength and power and agility and everything else. That's about as much as I can remember back then. But I'm telling you, when I saw the character on TV, I just kept looking at it, and I'm like, this is really weird. This is really weird. But
Are we talking an autobiographical character to some degree here? Was there some of yourself in this character, or vice versa?
I believe it was.
Right.
I believe it was.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. That I guess as a kid you don't even think like I should make a copy of the work, or like you do it, and you're so open-hearted and open-souled and well-intended as a child to just here,
Yes.
share this, and hopefully somebody recognizes it. And unfortunately, and
Didn't go that way.
and they don't even send it back.
Yeah.
Ouch. Aye. Well, it's those struggles that we go through, those knocks, right?
Yes.
That sometimes they set you back. So it kind of steered you away from creativity for a while, didn't it?
For a little bit, it did.
Mhm.
Once I got into high school, I was still drawing some, but I hooked up with a guy in high school. I forget his name, but he was really good as far as art is concerned.
Mhm.
Freehand drawing. I mean, he was really good. And I started hanging out with him and, just start trying to get some energy and vibes from him. And I continued to draw, but nothing. I had to draw, but not like, years ago as a kid. But I was so focused on, getting into art class. And I was let down by the art class because when I got in the art class, I'm thinking, we're going to be drawing and everything else. But
Mm-hmm.
first 3/4 of that class was all history, and I failed miserably. And I said, I just want to draw, man. I don't want to know all of this.
I took an art history class, I think, in college too, and I just remember thinking like, ugh, this is not interesting.
Yeah.
Like sitting around talking about, having to memorize all these paintings and stuff. That didn't do it for me.
Yeah, same here.
Didn't do it. And I was not the same, far from the same in the sense of, creativity and drawing. But I too, when I was a kid, was like the cartooning and doodling and,
Yes.
but never serious about it. Not like it never once came up with some character that I thought, I'm going to go send this off. That's a cool experience as a kid to like have felt, the strength of desire to create something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I just always want to, know. I said, I wonder how long Marvel. How as far as the time their vault is, like how much do they keep that information? Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing. If they, have a long history of stuff that they've accepted and rejected, they kept the rejected stuff. I'm willing.
Maybe they dig through it just for an inspiration or something, right?
I'll go to my grave saying my stuff is in.
Well, yeah, I mean, who's to say that they didn't or wouldn't? It's all this stuff's coming in, and it's like they're in the business of coming up with ideas, and they got all this stuff laying around. And you hate to say it, but certainly legally they could easily justify and say, even if they used it as inspiration, they changed it enough, so that it wasn't maybe yours.
Correct.
And there it is. So
it happens all the time.
there it is. There it is. Now, you went from this like through athletics, and then you came back to the creativity, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that a little bit.
So, played college tennis. Didn't do what I was supposed to do in college.
Mhm.
So that ended up me and my best friend. He was on basketball scholarship. And, you know, we sort of were in the same path and trajectory in terms of not doing what we were supposed to do. Great athletes, but just not so focused in the other area.
Right.
And he and I decided that we were going to join the military. But prior to that, my father used to always tell me, you know, get on me, oh, you should go in the Army. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And it was around the time when the movie Platoon came
Charlie
out.
Sheen.
Yep. And when I saw that on the big screen, I said, there is no way in the hell I'm going in the Army.
Right. I mean, that movie was terrifying from the perspective of what it showed of the Vietnam War. You
Exactly.
know? Horrible.
And I ended up in the military, did a stint there, played tennis in the Army. So that's a whole nother story. And what's the word I'm looking for? Just the glamour that I had from that, you know, being able to play tennis in the Army and watch everybody else go play G.I. Joe, and I, you know, had this skill that allowed me not to, you know, play Army so much. Got out of the Army.
But how is there an opportunity to play tennis in the Army? Like, especially because you went to Desert Storm, did you
Yes,
not? Right.
yes.
So like, how are you given an opportunity to go play tennis?
The military is very big in sports. So I don't know if you remember when boxing was very big. You had a lot of boxers that were in the military. They were on the all-Army boxing team.
Mm-hmm.
So in the military, they have, you know, their all-Army sports teams. And if you're on any particular sport and you make it to the all-Army sports team, you're very good. So you're able to travel, you know, and play whatever sport that is. And I was just lucky enough because I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, they were huge in sports, and they had a lot of great boxers that came out of Fort Hood. I forget the one guy's name. He was very big. I can't remember if he fought Tyson, but I think he came out of Fort Hood, Texas. So, and luckily at the time I had a coach that coached our team there in Texas, and he was a big sports fan as well.
Mm-hmm.
He should have been a professional baseball player, pitcher, but I don't know what happened. But he got into tennis. He ended up coaching the team. And the beauty of him was he found a way to, because I was on the team, we had a few other good players, but I was more or less the standout guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he started having interest in engaging some of these other colleges for us to play them. And so we played a lot of different colleges, and he had been in a lot of tournaments. And so when I traveled to go play tournaments, you know, I have a lot of coaches looking at me, and of course other players, they say, hey, what college do you go to? I start laughing. Well, no, I'm in the Army, man. They said, there's no way you play tennis like this in the Army. I said, yeah, it is. So, you know, I had a lot of them trying to come after me, which was good. But I put down my art. Had nothing to do with art.
Right.
My whole entire time that I was in there. When I got out, I was in Tampa for a year or two. I ended up back in West Palm Beach, Florida, in I believe 92 or 93.
Mm-hmm.
Started working, and I ended up working 8 years in the wine industry. And towards the end of that time, I have a cousin that got into promotions, and we had another friend of ours that was very good in graphic design. I mean, this guy was really good. He graduated from Art Institute. He actually worked on the first Aliens movie, and he actually did something with they had the first Grand Prix of Palm Beach. I think he did the artwork for that. And so I just my art interest started peaking, and I got back into it. And one of my wife's friends, she used to always say, you know, Greg, have you ever thought about switching careers and, you know, getting into graphic design or something, because you seem to love this? I always kept saying, nah, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept, you know, I stayed in and I kept doing. I started taking, you know, more classes. Just started getting around certain people that were doing a lot of things, and I really started. I mean, my art, it all started coming back to me, and I just, you know, stuck with it. And when I was at the wine company, funny story is, I said that may have been 99, or 2000. I had set a goal, and I said by 2002, I want to start my own company. That's what I said, right? And there was one particular, sorry if I'm going all over the place, but there was one particular time we had sales pitches, different teams in the wine company, and we had to go make a presentation. So one particular presentation, our team was tasked to make a presentation on, might have been turning leaf wine or something. And this is just when I was just learning how to make, this is when DVDs were hot. So I had my Apple computer and everything else, and I learned a program called DVD Studio Pro. And I mean, I learned it, I mastered it. So our sales presentation, I convinced them to let me do a skit, a video on it, and I'll make a DVD. So I made up a skit. Our team, we shot it, and I even had outtakes. And I did it on DVD, and I said, well, you know what? If I can pull this off, I'm going to try and make a pitch to them that maybe they should consider creating a division of this within the company and let me run it. That's, where I was going with it. So when I created this DVD, and I think when we had our huge general sales meeting, and our team was sucking up to go, and the minute I popped in that DVD and the graphics came up on the screen, I remember the guy saying, okay, it's clear to say we already know who won. So everybody else is going to be stuck in place, but and so when I showed the video, and of course our team won, and then they went and got down the general sales manager, I believe. And so I'm trying to make a pitch to him like, hey, just think you don't have to travel to all these different wineries all the time. If you create a video and put it on DVD, and you did all of this, and so I thought I had their interest, and so I just really started, doing my thing and staying focused. And I kept, with my art in terms of that, the graphic design, videos, and make a long story short, didn't work out how I wanted to. But I still had in the back of my head that 2002, I'd like to branch out and start my own company. That didn't happen. I got fired, right?
From the wine business.
Yeah, got fired. And that day, on the ride home, hey, I cried about it. But I said, you know what? I always wanted to start my own company, so here's your shot. No money, nothing. I took a leap of faith. And it was scary, because you're going from, although you're in sales and you're commission-based, yeah, you're still getting a check.
Yeah, you got a steady flow.
So now you're going from that to now you're really a lion. You're not going to eat unless you go out there and kill. So to make that whole transition was something totally different. Your mindset and everything else has to change. And you go from being an employee to, hey, you've got to run this show. There's a lot more that goes into it, and are you cut for it? So now I can say 20 years later, here I am. I'm still here. And I always say that, had I not been fired, I can't honestly say that I would have.
That you would have done it.
Correct. Because how many people actually, work for someone and say, hey, you know what, I want to start my own company or do this in X amount, unless you're really pushed because you're comfortable.
Yeah, it's a tough leap to make, and I give you a lot of credit and have a lot of admiration for that. To start with nothing, and just say, okay, I have a skill, I enjoy doing this, and I'm going to go out and just find a way to make it happen. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. Like, I did not do that. We bought an existing business and took over. So there was a book of business.
There, yes.
Yeah, there was something there. I can tell you that I still to this day, if me having an agency would have required me at that time starting off with zero and knocking on doors, I don't think I would have done it. I don't think of. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for that, because I look at that and go, I don't know if I could have succeeded from that level, You want
to hear something funny too?
Yeah.
So when I started, there was, I was taking any and every job and getting beat up and abused. But I always looked at it as if, these are just stepping stones. If I can stick with it and hold out, and my support system was great, it'll click. Because they say it takes 100 times, 1,000 times, or whatever the amount of hours is to become an expert in something.
10,000 hours.
10,000
yeah,
hours.
10,000 hours.
You just have to keep at it. So
Malcolm Gladwell, right?
So yes. So although when I started my company, of course, it's Grape Seeker Video and Graphics. At that time, I'd say 95% of the work was all graphics. Still loved video, but I wasn't getting a lot of video work. And so I don't know if I ever told you a story. So my largest paying client at that time, which was consistent, and they fed me a lot of work, I used to do ads for a male gay strip club.
Really?
Yes. So
no shit.
So I have cousins, you know, and we're like brothers. And they'd always, you know, they'd always tease me and rag me. Greg, how's those male strippers coming along? You got any cock shots you been working on? You know, I'd laugh at all. But I'm telling you, Chris, they kept me busy. They paid on time. They were very good. And they allowed me to be as creative as I wanted to, right?
Right.
And so I'll never forget the time when they'd have me come to some of their meetings. Of course, the meetings were like during the day. And the guys that ran it was a couple, Brandy and Mike. You know, Mike Gels. Mike had a deep, you know, real raspy voice. And Mike was very good to me, and Brandy. And so a couple of times I'd go there and I'd go to pick up my check. And they go, yeah, just come back tonight and pick it up. And I'm like, well, why can't you just give me my check now? Little did I know they were doing that because they know how uneasy I felt about walking into a male gay strip club at night. And they sit in the back office and watch me on camera, and they'd be dying laughing. All right, so
so they would make you come back and have to come in when it's business hours?
Yeah. So I'd walk in super fast, right to the back. Right. You're going by the stage, and I'm not looking left or right. I'm just walking straight to the back. All right, Greg. Yeah, Greg, hold on, right? And they go, yeah, we'll be right out with you. And I'm standing there. Yeah, just go to the bar, have a drink. And so I went to the bar, and I'm sitting there. Hey, Greg, what do you want to drink? I said, let me get up. And I went, you know what? Just let me have a bottle of water. Not that I don't have a phobia or anything, but I'm saying what I said is that's all that I need is to be sitting at this bar having a drink, and somebody walks in and goes, Greg! Say it ain't so. Hey, man, no, it's not.
I'm here to pick up my check. You work here?
Yeah. So, you know, they were very good to me for, I want to say 1 or 2 years. And they got to the point where I was doing so much work. And then they started getting, you know, some of their other people. They were asking, well, who's doing your ads? Because I was doing like flyers, magazine ads, newspaper ads. I mean, they kept me busy and the money was great. But it got to a point where I said, these people are great to me, but I'd like to go more into the corporate world. But I can't show anybody this work.
Now hang on a second before you. You mean your demo reel wasn't quite up to snuff for corporate America? No, okay, so you're doing all this work. Like, what is the work? Like, is it graphic design work?
Graphic design.
It's graphic design work, but literally, like, is it like dudes? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So all day long you're pointing and clicking and.
Yeah, but not naked. Not naked. Is that a couple of times I did have to go do some photography work, and I'm like, oh man, you know, hey. You gotta do what you gotta do. But I had some of my other friends, they would rag on me. And I'd sit there and laugh with them. Because
it's funny.
Because it was funny. I didn't take it personal.
Right.
And so, you know, it got to the point when I said, you know, I gotta transition away from this because I have all this work. But they're not gonna say, if I show this to a corporate client, they aren't gonna say, wow, that's very creative. I can only imagine what you're going to do. But they're going to say, yeah, hey, that's not for us.
You're not our kind of guy.
Correct.
Right? Like, that's not the kind of work we're looking to do. And they probably would assume that that's what you did, right?
Correct.
It's like somebody coming out of porn and trying to be a regular actor, right? You're like,
so, by them being so good to me, I just couldn't figure out. I was trying to figure out a way, how can I get out of this? Because what happens is, so they had other businesses like theirs that were trying to get me to do their ads. And I told them, I said, listen, don't give out my name or anything, because I don't want to get stuck, doing this. Yeah, the money's great, but I'm going to get stuck, and I don't want to do that. So
how did they handle that when you said that? Did they understand?
They were fine.
Yeah.
They were fine. They understood. But again, going to the point where I was trying to find a way to exit from that, and I didn't know how to tell them, hey guys, So I said, because I just had a hard time saying, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think I raised my prices, and they paid it. But after a while, they said, hey, Greg, can you help us? Can you go, lower on the price? And I said, no, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And so again, they paid for it a little while, and then of course they
you priced yourself out of their market.
Yeah. So that was my way, of getting out, and then so that was the transition that allowed me to get out. So I still had all this body of work that I still couldn't show. And I said, well, how am I going to be able to get into the corporate world, or where I'd like to be, and that was still even a challenge. I started doing, my commercial work started picking up a little, but I didn't have a reel. So what I did to make a reel, is I went out and created spots of my own commercials. I spent like maybe a month or so, created all these different commercials, because I needed to show something. Right. And
just making stuff up.
Yep.
Right.
And that helped me, because I remember I used to do a lot of commercials before Xfinity, Comcast, but when it was strictly Comcast, and they didn't have an in-house person, they used to use different vendors for their commercials. And even then with them, they had all these sales reps, but when you go make a presentation to the sales reps, how good your work is, they all want to know, well, who's used him, or who's used him or her. So it's a matter of you getting one of them to take a chance on you, to use you. And if you do well, then of course, it spreads to all the sales reps. Say, hey, you seem to like this company, or would you recommend them? Now you end up doing a lot of work, for all of them. So that was a great transition for me to do that. And, the shift happened. I went from 95%,
gay strip club. I'm sorry. It's so freaking funny. Like,
I still have. I'm gonna have to show you some of those ads. I still have some of those ads. Yeah.
I can just see you. Knowing you now as a dude, just like sitting there, like at the bar, like, oh man, no, I'm here to get my check. Just, and it's funny too, right? Like, what is it? Straight guys, where there's always that like, oh man, I don't want I don't want anybody to think the wrong thing here, right? Yeah. Even though in your heart of hearts you know what you are, and it's still like, oh shit, somebody could see me in this place. What are they gonna think of me? And we put so much value on what other people think of us sometimes,
That's how it was then, but now listen. You are who you are.
Right.
I like you or love you no matter what you are. If you choose to be this way, listen, hey, as long as you're nice to me, that's fine, because that's what you chose. I have nothing to do with that. I'm going to like you or love you as a friend no matter what. So, who cares? That's your life. If you're happy, I'm happy.
That's how I feel about it as well, too, We'd all do better with more love and accepting of each other, right?
That's absolutely correct.
And I think I know you're that way. I'm that way. I have my moments where sometimes I'll be like, man, I'm really... my head and heart are aligned, at particular moments, and that's usually just when you're dealing with stress, you're irritated, we all get that way, but it's the diversity of what we all share that makes things really interesting, and we've talked about this a lot, and that's why you're a good fit here in our crazy organization. We've got everybody here has got their, their thing.
Yes.
Right. That brings a different, flavor in, and collectively as a whole. And, one thing that I wanted to share with you is that I view you as an extremely important component of what we're doing here.
Thank you.
Because, well, you're welcome. And you've earned that, but you've earned that, but it's, you're the right fit. And I say that because, and I say that it's so important because, as I reached out to you a year ago during the pandemic, and I was like, I've got this idea, I want to start doing these things. You were the one that came to mind, because I just remembered you were the best cameraman I'd ever worked with, and you were up here. We were still scrounging around down in these lower levels. And the role that you have is so important, because I believe that the next wave of the agency, and me, quite frankly, in terms of what I'd like to accomplish for myself, I mean, it very heavily weighs on this content that we're creating, right?
Yes.
And we've just started, right? Like, so this will be podcast episode 22 or 23, right?
Yes.
And I think Joe Rogan says take the first 100 and throw them in the trash can. I don't feel that way, but we're working this out here, and we've got some other things that we're going to be doing around here, and in this world that we live in. And it's funny because, sometimes I'm all gung-ho and I want to do all this content and put it all out there, and that's what you got to do. That's what you have to do in this day and age to run a business. And there's other times where I'm like, man, I just wish I could run my business off of like a farm, and have it be super successful and great. And I could tinker around and pluck away, the things that I like to do without having to do all this promotion. So for me, it's a conflict sometimes. But
I think that's pretty much a lot of us.
Yeah, it's we live in this world now because of the internet and because of digital marketing and social media and stuff, where if you're going to succeed, you've got to be known to some degree. You got to be out there. People have to see you and recognize who you are and what you stand for. And, on one hand, that's really cool. And on another hand, it's like, maybe because we're of a, I find myself saying this more recently, and I don't like it, like of a different generation. Like I'm saying it too much lately. I'm counting numbers in my head, but it's like, it's what has to be done.
Yes.
Right? And I want to grow this business, and I want, all of us to succeed to higher levels, and I want to be able to always provide better lifestyle for my family and do, and so this is it, right? And so
Yes.
if we're going to do this, then we're going to be creating this content and sharing all of us in different ways. And so that's why I say you're such an integral piece of what we're doing. And I'm also really thankful that you're coming with a different perspective, right?
Yes.
Your life's experience and what you've been through in life and who you are as an individual brings a different perspective. And I think that helps balance it out. And I don't mean it just to be black and white. Like, it's not that. That's a part of it, right? But we've had a lot of these conversations before, and I always enjoy when we get into the thick of, like the issue conversations,
Yes.
because we always find like a real cool pathway to go through it, one that's understanding and respectful, and I think that's important.
It's very important, because unfortunately the world that we live in now, that's what we aren't seeing. We're seeing too much us against them. We're not saying, well, how can we achieve this without the mudslinging and this, that, and the other? And we're really not working together collectively as a whole like I think that we should, because we're so divided on all fronts.
And the scary thing about it is that behind the scenes, I was, when we did the episode yesterday with Sam, we were talking about, his growing up in Syria and what the world thinks of Syria,
right.
and what his experience growing up was, which was totally different than what I would have expected. And, so this 24-hour news cycle that we are in right now, right, has become extremely problematic, I think, because the vast majority of our country and or the world is getting their information about what's going on in the world from a news source that is biased in one way or the other. And and this isn't about fake news or the media, but you got the CNN camp, you got the Fox camp.
Mm-hmm.
there's really no, I mean, there is no like central avenue, middle of the road news organizations that just kind of tell you what's going on without there being some kind of slant. Everything is opinion based, right? And so if as people we were already divided to some degree based either on belief or on race or on religion, whatever those initial divisions could have been or still are, they are amplified massively right now, because
very much so.
Nothing is just the news. Nothing is just a human experience anymore. Everything is politicized. From politics to race to sexuality to gender to COVID. It's like you can't even make a decision about something regarding your health without falling into like some sort of camp.
Yes.
And I think that's really unfortunate, because as you and I have communicated, and anybody that I care about or spend time with, you talk, and it's like there's this shit that's going on out in the world that's being amplified nonstop all day long on the news or social media, internet, whatever. And then when you step away from it and you're just together as people, it's very easy to sit down and have conversations with people that are very different and may have different opinions about stuff, as long as you're just kind-hearted and respectful to each other. You and I are not going to see eye to eye on everything.
That's correct.
Right? But I also know that if there's things that we see differently, I know that each one of us would go, interesting. That's the way that he sees that, right?
Yes.
And that's different from the way that I saw it. But maybe I might modify my thought process based on having an exposure to somebody with a different experience, right?
That's correct.
And I don't mean to say it's easy, but what the fucking world is going through right now it's just like, it's madness. And that's why sometimes I'm like, oh man, it'd be great to have a farm and barn out back, and I just go fucking, bale hay or some shit like that.
It's a thing I've said to you before. I think I've asked you, like, what are the 3 R's that are destroying, that have been destroying us since the beginning?
Well, I know it's religion,
yes,
race, and I can't remember what the third one is.
Real estate.
Interesting. Yeah, that's right. I forgot we talked about that.
We're fighting over. So the 3 things that should bring us together, dividing us. Mm-hmm. Now, what are the 3 things that unite us all? No R's, just 3 things that unite us all.
Well, I would say that it is family.
Yeah, but that's not one of them, because family will wrap into what I'll say the 3 are.
Well, rather than me stabbing in the dark, because I know we've talked about this, but
yes,
but go ahead and just tell me.
Food,
right?
Alcohol, and music.
Yeah.
Those 3 things unite us all no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about how crazy this is. So let's say I don't like Italian people, but I love Italian food. I think that's absolutely crazy.
Right.
If you're a white guy and you're racist and you don't like black people, you don't like Asian people, but you love Asian food, or you don't like Mexicans, but you love Mexican food. I mean, the whole thing is just crazy to me.
Well, it makes no sense, and it's you've got this generational thing that happens. It's based in fear. It gets passed on from generation to generation in a lot of ways. And think about it. It's like, okay, well, I think because in some cases the human mind or people just can't see past it. Let's just say I am, whatever race, and somebody of another race did something bad to me or my family at some point in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't need to equate to this one bad person did something to me, and so now the whole race is that. Because we all know it's like every race, color, creed, religion, whatever, there are good people, there are bad people, there are people that have experienced tremendous pain and suffering, and as a result they act in a hurtful way to others. But it's not endemic, look at how Muslims are portrayed, right? Mm-hmm. You've got this sort of this radical sect that taints how people view the entire Muslim religion, right?
Yes.
Now, I've had opportunity now to be around a lot of Muslims, and from the form of my wife and her family and friends and all that stuff. And I've found them to be nothing but the warmest and most, gracious and hospitable people that I've been with, as much or anybody else, right? But we get these like glimpses into the worst of things, and then people make this assumption that like that's how it is with everybody, and it's just, you got to deal with human beings one-on-one.
But it's been that way since the beginning of time, man. You're always going to have good, like somebody explained to me when I was going off one day to them about the state of the world and how people are. He said, Greg, he said, Bud, the world needs bad guys. He said, it's been that way since the beginning of the time. He said, there's always been good and bad people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always going to be that way. We don't want it to be that way. We would like to see it differently, but unfortunately it's just the way that it is. I mean, that doesn't mean that we should accept that there's going to be bad people,
right?
Because no one wants that. It's just an unfortunate thing. How do you eradicate that? I don't know. That's the $1 million question.
I don't know if you can. I mean, you think there's almost 8 billion people on the planet, and human beings have been in existence for what, 6,000-7,000. I don't know what the number is, but obviously you go back before, AD and BC, and you literally thousands of years, and people have been JJ, battling and struggling for existence and survival. Yeah, I mean, life is tough. It's a lot less tough now.
Yes.
But if you think back to the time when literally, your life was on the line at all times just to get out there and be able to support your family to some degree and take care, I mean, it's tough. So you can understand why over all these years, you had and if you listen to history, it's just like one nation. So it goes to your real estate thing, like, one nation, these people are battling those people and battling it, and everybody's battling for resources over all this time, and you get to where we're at now, where you have a global population, and nations for the most part are pretty set as to what the nations are, and you've got power structures and corporations and all this stuff, and it's like people are still constantly battling, I think it starts in a good desire to want to be able to better your life or provide better, but there's this constant struggle for, we need to get
dominance.
Ours. Yeah,
I think with the pandemic, what it had shown me is that what I believe is that we humans, we're the actual virus. And why do I say that? When we went into lockdown, and I remember doing a couple of different jobs for some cities around here. I'll give you a case like for Pompano. I had to do some work. I've done a lot of work with them, but one particular thing I did, they wanted some aerial coverage of the beach when the beaches were closed. There's no one there. They just wanted to get that view because they'll probably never get it again. And if you could have seen how blue and how pretty the water was and how everything was just clean and clear, and you could also see it around the globe. I mean, look at what happened in, is that Italy or with Florence? How they said the waters cleared up.
Right.
Smog went down in other parts of the world. The rotation of the earth slowed down. So we're the virus.
I've seen a lot of things mentioning that recently, and I don't know that I agree or I disagree. Because I think, and listen, we've done a tremendous job of destroying this planet as human species, right? Now, was it all intentional? No. I think a lot of things along the way have been part of our evolutionary process of coming up with solutions to everyday problems that at the time seemed to make sense, right? Whether it was, how do we keep fire going? It's oils, and oils can come from fatty animals, or oils can come from petroleum sourced in the ground, right? We moved into the Industrial Revolution, and you start putting out this, this pollution as a result of doing that. But the Industrial Revolution provided a lot of really great things for our planet in terms of being able to have machinery that traveled and took us places here and there, and we could do commerce over bigger areas. So a lot of the things that we have experienced that are now really blatantly, obviously injuring the planet, if you will, I don't think it was an evil intent. I just think that was the best solution that we had at the time. But you get to the time now, and this just drives me nuts. It's just like everything seems fucked up, right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen Seaspiracy, like the commercial fishing industry. You know, if you really believe what that documentary is about, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the havoc it's doing to the oceans. And if you look at what is one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases, it's animals, right? Because everybody's eating so much damn meat, and there's cows everywhere. We're cutting down, forests to have more beef raised and all this stuff, and that's putting a lot of methane and ozone and gases. And we've got all these things that I think naturally were like solutions to problems. How do you feed people? How do you do this stuff? And now it seems like they're all coming together and almost backfiring like at the same time. At least that's what it feels like.
Well, here's another conspiracy theory for you from my part. So it makes me think, with all of these missions now, they're trying to go to Mars. I'm saying to myself, you know what? Because I understand the reluctance of people to believe what the government tells you, right? Because we've known that government has done a horrible job with handling a lot of things,
mm-hmm.
right? So in the back of my mind, I'm saying, well, you know what? So what is our real agenda for trying to go to Mars? So many times now, are they, is our planet, of course our planet is dying, but is the pace of what our planet is dying, are they holding that from us? So are they looking at the long term of, hey, you know what? We've got to try and find life somewhere else, because, if it's 100 years, 200 years, or whatever the case is, this place is no longer going to be here.
Well, I mean, it's certainly within the realm of believability, right? I mean, okay, so why? I mean, why is Elon Musk so focused on it? I mean, he's leading the charge,
Yes.
like I guarantee that he'll find a way to make this happen, right? Is it just sheerly ego gratification to be the one that like led this effort? Probably to some degree, but we wouldn't be looking if there wasn't that component that I think we all live with every day. It's sort of like this existential threat that we don't even want to discuss. It's
right.
like you keep hearing, like we live here in South Florida. I mean, how many times have you heard that in the next 10 to 20 years, like a large portion of South Florida could be underwater as a result of the continual melting of the polar ice caps, right?
Right.
But we're still building like fucking crazy down here, one gorgeous high rise after the other. And all this stuff is going on, and it's like, what can be done about it, right? Is okay. So one possible solution is, okay, we take a certain portion of the population and go colonize another planet. That doesn't sound like fun to me, I can tell you that. Like, I love planet Earth. I think it's beautiful.
Yes.
It's like it's such a blessing to be able to be a human being living on this planet at any time, but certainly now. And I just, my big thought is like, with all the wealth that's being created in the world and all the economic opportunity, how come people haven't yet figured out how to become insanely wealthy from, for lack of better terminologies, being planetary janitors? How do we clean all this shit up and restore this planet back to a more sustainable, right? A more sustainable environment? What needs to be done? I don't even remotely have any of the answers to this, but I find that it's like somebody's going to figure that out.
Now, you mentioned that before, and I believe if there is someone that can become a planetary, janitor. So look at who they're going to have to fight, because now you're talking about canceling out other profitable areas that are actually harming and hurting the Earth. It's going to be great for the Earth, but you're going to cancel out these other, industries, which means that, you've got your lobbyists or whatever, they're going to come hard after you to make sure that you don't. I mean, look at it. We're the 21st century? Why are we still using gas in cars?
Well, they're trying to wean it off, but the thing that's fucked up about it is everybody's like, well, I've got a Tesla, I've got an electric car. Okay, great. What do you think provides the energy to create the electricity on the grid that your car plugs into? It ain't fucking nuclear fission. It's not other electricity. It's fossil fuels that they use to create the power that people are plugging their cars in. So this whole thing about like we're switching to electric cars and somehow that's moving us significantly away from fossil fuels, I don't think that's really the case, because fossil fuels are still ultimately the source that's creating the power to plug this stuff into. Mm-hmm. And so I would love to see us, what I can't figure out is, again, I don't know enough, right? And I don't know that I ever will. But I'm curious if, is oil and fossil fuels so profitable, right, that reinvesting into, even if you're ExxonMobil or whatever, right? Or even if you're, I guess if you're the Saudis, you got all this oil and that's just the way it is. But is there not a legitimate business plan that would be as profitable to reinvest money into, to shift the Earth towards, the planetary population towards other energy sources? That, because it's got to be profitable. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. It has to be profitable. You can't expect an ExxonMobil or the Royal Saudi family or whoever has significant power over this stuff. They're not going to move away from their interests.
No, they're not.
Right? They're not. There's no way. There's too much power. There's too much control. There's too much. And it's not even just greed. If you run a large multinational corporation, you're responsible as the CEO to make sure that your company is profitable and you are providing opportunity and you are growing. Like, that's your job, right? So you got to do that. We got to find the profitable ways to save the planet, if you will.
That's very tough, and I don't know the answer.
I don't either. I hope someday, as these conversations grow, more people are reached by these conversations, and we can talk to more people who have better information, right? That's that's really what I want to do here. Is like, I want to learn more, right?
Yes.
Why are we struggling with this stuff?
I think it always comes down to greed. So you want me to change? I've been making billions and billions of dollars off of oil or whatever the case is, and now you're wanting me to switch away from oil or whatever it is to jump onto this standard. So I'm going to lose, and like you said, I have to provide for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So that's very disruptive. Just think about it when you talk about disruption. Look at what the Uber did to the cab companies, right? So instead of the cab companies, instead of them stop resting on their laurels to figure out how are we going to combat this, they didn't. How did they combat it? By trying to sue, right? Same thing with the hotels and Airbnb. That was disruption. So you got to think about the cab companies. You're putting out of 10, you're putting maybe 2 out of 10 people out of work, right? You can't be disruptive like that in the automobile industry, because just think, if they all of a sudden said, we're going the way of Tesla, we're going to take up that model, which means now you're going from putting maybe 2 out of 10 people, 2 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Now that number's going to jump to like 7 to 8 out of 10. You cannot disrupt like that, because now there's that whole chain of people that you're putting out of work, and they aren't trained in the new way. So are these companies now that are looking towards going towards, let's say, the Tesla model, the electric model, are they training their people now to prepare them for that shift? Because it's going to happen. At what pace is it going to happen? I don't know, but it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So they call that the disruption model.
Again, I'm not sitting here suggesting that we just move away from fossil fuels or petrol. Like that. That's not going to happen. But you'd think that there would be a profitable investing in the future business plan or strategy. You'd think, to be able to reinvest and develop something in parallel that could be something that in 50 to 100 years you can make a switch to, right? Like that I'm not saying like stop this to start that.
Yes.
But it seems to me that there are things that need to run in parallel right now that are significant investments in the future in terms of clean energy and things that would help the sustainability of our planet. again, I just don't know enough yet, and I guess if I really wanted to know, I'd spend my days scouring this stuff, which I don't. I really would rather talk to people smarter than me and have them tell me. Like that's what I would rather. But I just, it's such a beautiful place that we've been given this rare opportunity to be able to be in, and you're right. Like back to your little thing, it's just sort of like we're a virus. We're destroying this thing. We're eating it up, using it up, spitting it out, and not leaving something as good behind as what was here.
The pace has become, faster than what we've ever anticipated.
Yeah. And I don't know. Do you find yourself wanting to slow down sometimes? Like, I mean, I do sometimes.
Sometimes I do, but my issue is that it's just so hard for me to sit still. It's funny because I have some friends that say, man, you were so not like this when you were an employee and you worked here. They said, now we can't even get you on the phone, or you always got to go, you always got to do this, and you're never slowing, you're not sitting down. And I think I have a lot of that. I get a lot of that from my father too, because my father never really sat down up until the day he suddenly passed away. But my father was always going, and
mine too.
Maybe I did pick that up from him, but it's funny, when I do sit down, my body just shuts down and I go to sleep.
Hey, tired. Well, and it's also, I don't want to say it's easier to be going a million miles an hour, but when you got your own thing and your own thing is what you love to do.
Yes.
I mean, it's a real blessing and an opportunity to
keeps
be
you sharp.
Yeah,
I think keeps your mind sharp, and if you add to that you being physically active, by keeping yourself in shape, eating correctly, everything in moderation. But I think that's a great thing. And too many times you see people that aren't. They just aren't doing anything physical. They aren't keeping themselves sharp. So. When that starts to happen, then you have these breakdowns. And then now you're doing everything else to try and
get yourself back together.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm there right now. After I was pushing myself real hard and wasn't in as much fitness as I normally like to be, got COVID. I'm over it, but I'm not firing on all cylinders yet. And it's not because of any other reason that it just, the physical fitness game for me is something that takes some time to ramp up until I get back into like sort of like a crazy mode with it, where it just like you're thinking, it's like it's the number one thing. Right?
Yes.
So I'm working my way back there, but it makes such a big difference, right?
It sure does.
It really does. Have we solved any of the problems of the world today? Or
we have not solved any problems, but one thing I would like to see is that, as I said earlier, is that we need to have more conversations and not so. The finger pointing has to stop, right? I think we have to be able to have those conversations, and sometimes those conversations are hard. Sometimes it's holding that mirror up to your face, and asking yourself, am I right? Am I wrong? And then also hearing it from someone else. Classic example, sometimes when you think you're doing good and there might be, something in the back of your head going, I need to step this up. Okay, I'll step it up. The reason why I'm saying that, because there was a point months ago, I think, when we were doing this, and, of course, you know how I am. I want to look this way. I want to be very pretty and everything. And, this is my hold the mirror to my face part. And I joke with Donna a lot about it. And I think we just recently told you we created a hashtag INH. So sometimes, when Don and I are going back and forth on WhatsApp and she's looking for information from me and vice versa, we may send each other a text and say, hashtag INH. So what does the hashtag INH mean? I'm not happy. So this all happened, one day when, you pulled me and Don in the office and you discreetly, and I tell you to this day, to tell you to your face, much appreciated. And was it needed? Yes. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. But guess what? You have to learn to stand in the paint and take those punches, keep your mouth shut, and just say, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. It'll never happen again. And you keep it moving. And that's exactly, what you did, but it's just the way that you did, come in, have a seat. close the door. I'm not happy. And when you said that, my stomach hit the ground. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be hearing this. But you know what? Sometimes you need to hear those things.
It's just, listen, it's a relationship, right? I mean, once we've established, okay, do you have the core skill set to help me accomplish what I want to accomplish, right?
Yes.
The answer is yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's off the table. Does that mean that you and I are going to be perfectly aligned in everything right out of the gate or forever? No. But there's just got to be this process of going back and forth,
Yes.
to kind of hone it in.
Yes.
And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to have conversations about, well, how can we improve this and how can we improve that,
Yes.
And, I don't profess to have any great answers because there's always something in my life where I'm like, man, I'm really fucking this up right now. I got to do better here and I got to find my pathway through. But I guess the one thing that I do believe in is that if you can sit down and have the difficult conversations and communicate honestly how you feel or what you're hoping to accomplish, it's not always easy, but if it can be done with as much tact, not saying I always do that, that's just part of the growing and learning from each other process.
Well, sometimes you may have to not be tactful because sometimes you really have to get your point across and drive it home because you know the personality of each individual, who can take it and who can't. And what was so funny about that is after that, Donald's like, just talking to me, oh my gosh, Greg, you didn't say a word, you didn't say anything, you just took it and you said that. I said, well, what am I going to say? We're not going to sit there and go and say, well, no, I didn't see it that way. So you can't do that. If you're at fault, if someone's, first of all, they don't have to say anything to you. They could just say, you know what, I'm going in a different direction, this is not working, right? And you can sit there going, well, I wonder what happened, right? But you have to give that person respect that will say to you, here's the deal, you aren't doing what I expected you to do and I can't have this. No matter how they say it, nice, nasty, whatever the case is, if you know, right? There's no assumptions. It's in your face. Here's the deal. Now, what are you going to do to correct it? But this is my last time having this conversation with you. That's it. Then it shouldn't be from me or anyone else that now I got a chip on my shoulder because I was called out. No, you weren't holding up your end initially, so correct it and
it's
keep it moving.
Interesting too, because how do I want to say this? I've sort of adopted this phrase later in life: you either win or learn, right?
Yes.
And I'm getting to a point now in my life where there's some things that I'm always, trying to work through and or improve. And I'm getting more comfortable with the fact that, okay, if I'm feeling something or something doesn't feel right to me, I'm going to communicate how I feel about it, right?
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm right. If I'm wrong, I want to know I'm wrong, and I want to learn from that. And that's something that's taken me a long time, to get to the point where it's like, okay, I realize now you always want to be right, and if you have a vision for what you want to do or how you want things in your life, then you need to communicate that. But sometimes it's very easy for us to not see our own shortcomings that we're bringing into a particular scenario that might be contributing to some of the things that you're getting back, right?
That's true.
And so, there's a few things in my world right now where I'm just feeling like, I could be wrong. And if I am, I'm okay with that. Like, I just want to know that I'm wrong sooner than later.
Yes.
So that I can make the adjustments, right, to grow.
Yes.
So, I guess that's sort of my rebuttal and also encouragement as we continue to grow and develop our relationship and develop our working relationship.
Yes.
That it has to be a two-way street, right?
That's correct.
And I'm perfectly okay being not right. want is the best outcome for everybody involved.
And the whole...
That's what I want.
100% given to it.
And the less that requires something that is inherently me, and the more that requires and or is inclusive of everybody else, it's better. That's better.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
Because then we can lift we can all
elevate,
do our part to elevate. We've all, in varying degrees, worked in some capacity to have this opportunity here, right?
Yes. But
the way that it will continue to grow and become something really special is with more inclusiveness. Yes. I still got to guide it, right? I still got to guide it. Still got to meet my stamp of approval, but it's got to be way more than that. Way more.
Yes.
I will say, because you brought it up, that it was funny because Donna, she said after that conversation, she goes, Greg called me. He was out in his van. And I answered the phone, and he goes, man, my ass is just killing me. My ass is killing me. And Donna was like, well, what's the matter? Like, did you... I haven't had my ass ripped like that since I was in the Army. It's not the intention, but I will,
I understand.
I learned later of this INH hashtag, yes. Which I gotta say, I'm not particularly proud that is in rotation, but if it provides you guys some good inside humor with each other,
I'll laugh out of it.
That's good, man. Gregory Dillard, you're a good man.
Thank you, Chris.
You're a good man. I enjoy it. We're going to do this. Yeah, I know. This table is like 6 inches too long.
I know.
Right? It's like, maybe we'll do something at some point in time. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
We will do this again. I appreciate you. It's always great talking with you when we get, I really, like my favorite thing, the work stuff, whatever, like I like when we are able to get into the zone,
yes.
and let the flow go, and we just did that. So cheers, man. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, you got it. Peace.